What's up, everybody? Mike from Bold here. We are about to kick off with Season 2, Episode 2 of Bold School of Commerce. We're talking all about today. No, we're not talking all about today. Today, we're talking all about product descriptions. So thank you for everybody who's tuning in. Hopefully the sound is working all right, and keep in mind that this is Bold School of Commerce, an e-commerce lesson where we live stream lessons every 2 weeks talking about e-commerce related stuff, how to make more sales, how to drive more traffic, how to come up with, today we're talking about product descriptions, we're going to be talking about podcasts, we're going to be talking about books to read, everything that you need and that will make you better at e-commerce. So for those of you who are very new to Bold School of Commerce, it's an e-commerce series where we run every 2 weeks, and we run it just like a classroom. Just like a classroom, if you have questions, feel free to write them in the comment section. We're streaming right now on Crowdcast and on Facebook. So if you happen to be on either of those platforms and you have a question about today's topic, let me know and I'll get to it. Happy to answer it. We're talking all about product descriptions today, and this was something that came up last year, actually. We were talking a lot about Shopify themes, how to drive traffic, how to create sales and all that. But a lot of people were wondering about some of the nuts and bolts of, running a Shopify store. A lot of you are new. A lot of you, you have your own products. Maybe some of you have started a drop shipping store where you're selling other people's products. That being said, every time you sell a product, you need to have a good product description that goes along with that. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. The syllabus for today, number one, we'll be talking about the 5 W's that you need for every product that you have on your store. That incorporates the who, what, when, where, why, and maybe even how. That's 6, and it's not really a W, it's an H, but that's no here nor there. We'll definitely get to that. Number 2, we're going to be talking about how to lock down a formula and a format and defining your voice. So what we mean by that is every product that you have should have a very similar product description. So that way you're consistent and you check all the boxes on the list. I'll be showing you a few brands and a few products that I'm actually wearing right now. I thought that would be a cool way to tie it in. We're going to be talking a little bit about Under Armour, about Sperry shoes, and about a Shopify store that somebody from Bold actually runs. They've got great product descriptions, and we'll talk about that. All of these 3 brands have to do with the same formula, and we'll get down to that formula so that way you can copy it and you can work your magic to your products, and you can sell. Number 3, we're going to be talking about highlighting the benefits as well as the features. Features are great. You have a new product. Let's say, Bold even has a new app. We're really pumped about the feature. We're excited because we think it's great, and internally, it's something that's very important to us. But your customers maybe necessarily don't care as much about your features as you do. What they care about are the benefits. So we'll be talking about how to correlate the benefit with a feature, so that way you really give your customers something more of a what's in it for them rather than what's in it for me, which is something that I think your customers will appreciate very much. And finally, we'll be talking about defining your voice and selling the experience, not the product. You can sell a product. There's tons of competition out there. The way that you're going to be able to differentiate yourself from your competition is by selling that experience, selling that lifestyle, and you want that to read well off of your product descriptions. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. So we'll get right down to it. Keep in mind that if you have any questions at all, I'll make sure to check the comment sections here to answer any of your questions if you do have. But we'll get right down into it, and we'll start talking about product descriptions. So I'm sure some of you have seen a lot of poor product descriptions, if you will. Maybe it's through a drop shipping store or something like that. I think that's a very common place to see that, where somebody just imports a product with all the specs. You see a picture of it, but then you just have a laundry list of all these bullet points with specs and things like that don't really help you sell the product. So that's something that we want to get away from. We want to get away from that and move towards a nice formula where you'll be giving them a nice description of your product, really selling that, showing them the benefits, listing some bullet points of the features, maybe what differentiates your product from another product, something that will help them out. And then after that, you can even include more pictures or maybe some reviews to help really encourage your customers to buy and to take away any other roadblocks. If you've got a great product description, a good list of specs, and some customer feedback, some positive reviews. If you have those on all your products, I can almost guarantee you that your sales are going to increase from whatever they are right now. These product descriptions, they really do go a long way. So as I mentioned earlier, the first thing that we're going to be talking about are answering the 5 whys. So for whatever product you have, you should be answering who the product is for, what the details of the product are, where the customer can be using this product, when they would be using the product, and why they should buy the product from you. So let's talk about the first one, the who. Who is this product for? Whenever you post a product or even you can consider this in your marketing in general, you have to consider who the product is for. And what I mean by this is you really got to nail down your target audience. Whenever you're talking to somebody, whether that's through social media or whether that's with your product descriptions, a piece of advice that I think works really, really well is to talk to just one person. Don't try and talk to everybody out there. Try and really talk to one person. The way that I best think that it really works is think about who your ideal customer is. Maybe that one person that you've done your marketing research, you found out your competition, and you found out who your ideal buyer is. Talk to them as if you would be talking to your friend or a colleague or somebody over lunch. Say, hey, I've got this really cool product. Here's what it does. Here's how you can use it. Here's people are talking about it. It's really great. The more general and the more lackadaisical you can be about that, I think that's what people and what customers really appreciate. They don't want you to be stuffy. They want you to really just be yourself and talk to these people as if you're talking to a friend. So when thinking about that, you have to consider the tone. Think about your brand. How do you want people to see you? If you're at a party and there's tons of other brands, there's tons of other people, you're introducing yourself. How do you want to talk to people? How do you want to make that first impression? Think about that conversation that you would have with that one person you meet at a party, and that's kind of the voice and the tone that you should be using for your products. Number 2, we're going to be talking about the what. Who and the what. The what is, what are the details? What is this product all about? What are some of the specs and what comes along with that product? These are more of the details. So you've said a little bit about, you've given a description about the product. Now we're talking about what? Give the specs here. So if it's a shirt, list the fabrics, maybe the sizes, any other specs. Specs is a pretty broad term, but whether you're selling cameras or electronics, there's different specs for different industries. So that's where you're going to want to list those specs. Number 3 would be the where. So we've got the who, the what, and the where. Where would your customer use this? Is this an indoor product? Is this an outdoor product? Is it seasonal? Is there a really specific place where your customer could use that? The more details you can give your customers about that specific product, the easier it's going to be for them to envision themselves actually using that product. So we've got the who, the what, the when. No, the who, the what, the where, and the when. The when kind of correlates a little bit with the where. The when comes back to when they would be using this. Is this something that they would use before they go to bed, something that they would use during the day, something that they would use at work, something that they would use on their commute? You're really just kind of molding out what your product does here by answering the 5 whys, and then or the 5 W's. And then finally, you've got the why. And that's really the most important. A lot of times, marketers are really asking you, what is your why? What's the purpose? Why should somebody buy your product? Here's where you're going to really drive home, how does your product make their lives better? What problem does it solve? Maybe sort of what sets your product away from your competition. And that's really it. Those are the 5 whys: who, what, when, where, why. We also talk about how. You might not necessarily need to incorporate the how. What the how is really how to use the product. If your product is really easy to use and it's a lot easier than your competitors, maybe that's when you can incorporate your how. But how is really just how does your product work. If it's not really cut and dry and very upfront about how your product works, maybe there's an opportunity here for you to talk about how your product works. So you've got the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. And those basically are answering the 5 whys for your product description. So now that you've answered those questions and you've kind of have a little bit of a Rolodex of information, you're going to start to talk about locking down a format. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in step number 2 here. Locking down a format means being consistent. So now that you have sort of the checkbox of information that you want to talk about, how do you want to present that information? And that's really important. I wanted to make that very clear. Before you start writing out your product descriptions, it is important to have a skeleton, and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing right now. But you want to have as much information. Think about what information you can give to your consumers, to your customers on why they need the product and how this product is just going to make their life better. That's really marketing in a nutshell. You're really just showing your customers why they need this product, how it's going to save them time, how it's going to make them more money, how it's going to save them hassles, how it's going to benefit their life is really the key to marketing here. You could have the best product in the world, but if people don't know why or how it's going to make their lives better, you're just going to be sitting there in the dust with all the other companies out there who aren't necessarily taking the time to craft their product descriptions like you guys are right now. For those of you who are just tuning in, I just wanted to make sure this is Bold School of Commerce, and we're talking all about product descriptions today. As I just mentioned, you can have the best products in the world, but if you don't craft a good product description, it's going to turn people away. The way that I look at it, it's almost the same as having a bad website. First impressions are lasting. Think about looking for, a new hat, a new shirt, a new phone. You go to a website and it just doesn't look good. You're immediately turned off and you're like, what is this? I'm not down. And you bounce out of there. That's the same thing that people are going to do with your product descriptions. If you've got a cool looking website, you've got a nice looking theme, everything looks good, everything works well, the navigation is very good. You click on that product and then you get to the product description and it's just a bunch of jargon or something that's not helpful or something that almost looks like an eyesore. People are going to bounce out of there. And that's why we're talking about product descriptions today. So let's get right down to it now. Number 2, we're going to be talking about setting it up and the format. And I mentioned it like a skeleton. How are we going to be laying out the product description? Now, I'll tell you first and then I'll show you. I've got three websites lined up with all of the same format here. It goes paragraph, bullet list, reviews. Paragraph, bullet list, reviews. The paragraph is going to be the long form description. This is where you're going to be incorporating those 5 W's and really painting a picture. Don't just tell them about the product. Maybe set up a scenario. Really put them in the mood. Like really paint a picture about how this product came to be, or how it's going to benefit them, or how it's going to save them time, or how it's going to solve a problem that they do have. And craft that in 1, 2, 3. You all know what a paragraph is. 3 to 5 sentences with that copy. Number 2, you're going to then have a bullet list. This is going to be the specs. So this is going to be the sizing, the color, the texture, everything else that comes along with that. If it's an electronic, if it's a piece of clothing, if it's a food, you're going to be listing out the specs, something that really stands out. I think a lot of us can agree that when we're looking either at a website or when we're reading online, we read in headlines. We're just looking for those big headlines and to really get sort of the broad strokes. Once we see that headline, we want it to be in bullet points so that way we can just look at it, get all the information that we need, and get out of there. And that's exactly what the bullet list is going to do for your product page. And then finally, to add a little bit more to that, if you do have some positive reviews about your product, or maybe even like you have your social media, your Instagram account, or you've got some user-generated content, people really enjoying your products, people talking about them, include that underneath those bullet points there. And I'm sure maybe now that I've talked about it a little bit, you all might have a good idea. Maybe you're starting to see that that's what a lot of the companies out there are doing. So let's switch right down into it. I'm just going to share my screen with you here. As you can see, we're in Under Armour shirt today, so I thought I would just show you an Under Armour shirt here. But let's take it right back down to locking down a formula. So we've got the picture of the shirt here. And as I scroll down here, you see exactly what we're talking about here. Boom. We've got the paragraph here. We've got the paragraph that's explaining and fleshing out those 5 W's. And then we've got here, they even lay it out for you. It says product DNA. So this is that bullet list of points, the list of specs or the list of features. Now, they don't have any reviews here. I take that back. There's a review right here, so that's great. So it's exactly everything that we were talking about. I must have confused myself with another one, but that's exactly the layout. You've got the picture, you've got a couple options with pictures. We've talked a little bit about product photography in last episode of School of Commerce, in case you didn't see that. You've got the copy here. You've got a paragraph of information that's explaining and fleshing out the 5 W's. You've got the bullet list of the specs and the features, and then you've got your review. So that's one of them. I'll queue up another one over here and talk a little bit about. I'm a big fan, and I'm actually wearing them right now, of the Sperry shoe. So here we go again. We've got the website for Sperry. You know, it's a great shoe, comfortable. Yeah, I like it. It's you slip it on, you slip it off. Hey, what are you going to do? So here we go again. Great company, great shoe. You know what? I enjoy the product. Not being a brand advocate, I'm not getting paid. I'm just saying I also like their product description. So check this out here. So we've got the description here. We've got the paragraph. We've got 3-5 sentences maybe. Then we've got the product specs, boom. And then we've got some recommended products, which are equally as good as a product review. So that's really great here. So you're probably starting to see that you're going to have a paragraph answering and fleshing out those 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, why. You're going to have bullet points listing out those specs and those features, and then you're going to have something that really drives that home, whether that's a review or whether that's some user-generated content, whether that's your social media channel, something like that, that gives your customers a little bit more. It's one thing for a brand or your company or your Shopify store or your e-commerce store to tell your customers all about your products, but it's another thing for customers to also have that conversation. Customers talking about how great your company is, how great your brand is, how great that shirt is, how great that pet food, that popcorn is, whatever it is you sell. The more that you can get that user-generated content and other people talking about your brand, it's almost free advertising. It's kind of a cool way to consider it that way. I'll show you one more product description here, just because I think this is really cool. This is Fat Witch Wild. It's one of the many companies that the Bold Commerce staff and builders have. And what I really like about it is it's basic and it follows the exact format. Let's take a look here. We've got the pictures here, absolutely. Then what do we have? We've got this description. We've got it fleshing out the 5 W's. We've got the bullet points, what you should know. They lay it out very easily. And then rather than having a review here, they've got their quality promise. So it's always that 3-point punch. You've got the description, you've got the bullet points, and then you've got something to really drive that product description home. So that is the formula. That's the format. I'm just going to take a quick look here just to see if anybody has any questions yet. And that being said, for those of you just tuning in, we are talking all about product descriptions. It's Bold School of Commerce, the e-commerce lesson where, just like an actual classroom, you have the opportunity to talk about it. And we don't want this just to be a lecture. Think about going to school, think about going to university or college or what have you, and where the lecturer just talks. They just talk at you, and it's, you know what I mean? I guess that's what I'm doing right now, so I shouldn't bash it too hard. But all I'm trying to say is what we're trying to do is we're trying to start the conversation. We're trying to encourage people to ask questions and to really participate. We want to know what you guys are doing. What if you, okay, I see a question here. Thank you, Alan, on Facebook. What if you have lots of details people care about? That's a really great question. And I think that where you can really drive that information home is with the bullet points. If you have lots of details that the people care about, it's really easy and simple for you to just to list them in the bullet points. So if you have lots of details related to specs, include those in the bullet points, specs and features. If you have other information that people might care about, maybe you could craft it in your copy or your description here, presenting, where these people would use it, why they would use it, when they would use it. If you really paint that picture for your customers, you're gonna allow them to be really comfortable and to really understand why they need the product. And once you have them and once you have their interests and once you've painted that picture, it's going to be less about the features and more about them just really knowing that they want that product. So there's an opportunity there for you to do that in your paragraphs, in your description, as well as bullet points. You could list probably 10 features, 5 and 5. It's only going to take out a little bit of that space, which is going to be, you need that space, but it's only going to be taking a little bit of that space, and it's really going to be able to drive those specifications home. Hi, product description will work together with the product options. Oz, I'm not really sure what you're asking there. Maybe you could flesh out that question. Yes, also product comparison. Yeah. So you want to there's a question here about bold comparison, but not on a product page. If you have the opportunity to compare products, the more information that you can give your customers on your website, on your product page, the less likely they are to bounce out of there and go check out information. You just don't want people to leave your website to go and find more information, or leave your store to go and find information. So if you do have the option to use Bold's product comparison app, absolutely, that would be really great, because then you can compare specs. The key there is just to make sure that you list the specs and you have a really solid product description there. So thanks everybody for the questions. I hope I'm answering them to your liking. I'm just going to check Crowdcast really quick here, and then we'll get right back into the lesson. And what we're going to be talking about next is defining your voice. So now that you have a really good understanding about your products, you've answered those 5 W's, you know the format that you want to talk about, you're going to be defining your voice. Now, when you're defining your voice, I mentioned it at the beginning of this lesson, think about it as you're talking to your friend. Think about it as you're talking to your coworker. You're talking about your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friend, somebody on the bus. Have a conversation. Talk about what the product does. Talk about how it benefits you. Talk about how you use it. Talk about how somebody else uses it. And the way you're describing it to your friends should be the way that you're describing it on your website, because that's your brand and that's your voice. One pro tip here is to use sensory words. And what sensory words are more powerful and more memorable than the traditional words that we use. So think about it if you sell a product. You sell maybe some popcorn. You say it tastes delicious or it tastes good. Those are pretty general words. But if you use more sensory words that provoke some sort of emotion or some feeling, this popcorn is absolutely tantalizing. The sweetness of it, it really brings out those feelings. And that's exactly what you want to do with your copy. Don't just sort of use those general words. Really try and stretch it out and use those words. If it's a flashlight or something like that, or maybe a camera, the flash of the lights, it's really bright. Now, it's not really bright. It's dazzling. It's a gigantic flash. Like really, really use these sensory words. You don't want to use them too much and take advantage and really sort of lose that effect. But the more you can use those words to really stretch out what you really mean, it's going to help you go a long way. So keep in mind to use those sensory words. So we've talked about the fleshing out the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why. We've talked about getting that cookie cutter formula, that template that's going to allow you to be consistent, and that's going to allow you to have that description, the bullet points, and some clout, maybe a product review, maybe some recommended products, something like that. We've talked a lot about using sensory words to drive those points home. And now what we're going to move into, we're going to be talking about... I just lost my notes here. Just let me take a second here. Oh, yeah. We're talking about highlighting the benefits and the features. So I briefly breezed over this before, but let's talk a little bit about it. When we sell our own products, we definitely focus on the features. What makes these products cool? What makes them different than everybody else's product? And that's great. That's definitely some information that people want to know about your products. But you have to put yourself in the customer's shoes. Do you think that if a company was telling you all about these awesome features and how great their product is, that's going to make you want to buy that product? Or do you think you'd be more inclined to buy that product if rather than talk about the features, they talked about the benefits? How this is going to make your life better, how this is going to solve a problem that you have, how this is going to save you some time, how this is going to X, Y, Z. You can fill in the blanks here. So what you want to do when you're listing the benefits, when you're listing the features, you want to include a benefit. So if your product, is a time saver, you can say that's what the benefit of that product is. So if whatever the feature is, whatever is new, whatever is awesome about your product, make sure to incorporate the benefit, because that way your customers will really appreciate that. And you always have to consider selling online, especially in e-commerce, is a two-way conversation. Gone are the days where somebody would watch a TV show and see a commercial for Tide or Purell or something like that, and they say, Tide is the absolute best detergent, there's no way around it, we're the best, we're absolutely the best. Now, if Tide did a commercial like that, somebody could go on social media and say, you know what, actually Tide isn't the best. And this is nothing against Tide. You know what, I think I use Tide, you know, who knows really. But what I'm trying to drive home here is that it's a two-way conversation. Social media and the internet and e-commerce has allowed for customers to voice their opinions about your brand. So you really do have to consider that. So whenever you're talking about your product and you're listing all of the awesome features that it does have, make sure to incorporate the benefits on that. So for those of you who are just tuning in, we are really, we're crushing it today. We're talking all about product descriptions. We're talking about why they matter and how you can do it. Some of the items that we've talked about today, for those of you who are just tuning in, or for those of you who have been with us from the start, answering the 5 W's. Before you even consider writing your product description, look at your product and answer those 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, why. Throw in that how, if it's really easy, or if you need a little bit of explanation for your product. Talk to your customers like you would be talking to a friend. So when you do eventually write your product descriptions, use the language and use the voice that you would when you're talking about your product with your friend, because that's really your brand. Your brand is you having a conversation with your friends. So keep that in mind. We've talked about how to lay it down. The format that you see across the board on many successful stores, many stores in general. You've got the description, 3 to 5 sentences, painting a picture for your customers, answering and fleshing out those 5 W's. You've got the bullet points. You've got the bullet points showing and telling about the product specs, the features, and maybe the benefits as well. Because as we talked about, when you talk about features, talk about the benefits. After we've got the description and a bullet point list of all the features and the awesome things, include some clout, you know, maybe a review, maybe some user-generated content, maybe some recommended products, something like that. Something that just adds a little bit of sizzle to your product description. And then we talked about, you know, using those sensory words, really trying to bring out the emotion to your product. You know, your product isn't just good, it's amazing. Your food isn't just yummy, it's tantalizing. You know, think about the ways that you can really put your products up on a pedestal, sprinkle in those words, and you'd be surprised at how effective it can be. The last thing that I just wanted to talk about briefly, as we are reaching the end of School of Commerce here, where we're talking all about product descriptions, is the idea that you don't just want to sell a product, but you want to sell an experience. And that's really the point that I wanted to drive home at the end of this, the lesson plan here. Really paint a picture for your customers. Paint a picture of when they can use this product, how they can use the product, how other people are using the product. And the best way to do that is just do a little research. You know, check out some of the brands. You know, I was looking at Under Armour and Sperry's. Take a look at some copy out there and see what speaks out to you. And it's going to be the brands that are really of creating that, you know, that emotion. They're painting a picture for your customer, so that way when your customer takes a look at your product and they read your product description, they're going to be able to picture themselves using their product. They're going to be able to picture themselves saving time, or feeling better, or looking better, or having a delicious snack, or having a delicious treat. Something like that. Don't just list the specs and the features. Don't just take cool pictures and expect it to happen. You really do want to paint that picture and sell that experience for your customers. So that's about it. We're reaching the 30-minute mark here. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll just check the questions here. We got Mustache Digital, great advice, thank you. Alan, Oz, thank you guys for the questions. That being said, if I didn't answer your question, or there was something that you want to know, these videos live on the internet now. They're going to be living on Facebook. If you did sign up for Crowdcast, they're going to be there. Feel free to write a question in there. That being said, if you've got a question other than something related to product descriptions, let us know too. That's exactly what we're here for, and that is exactly why we run Bold School of Commerce. We want to empower as many entrepreneurs out there who are starting online stores. We want to give you the tools. We just want to give you what you need to know, so that way, you can also have a piece of this e-commerce pie. We run Bold School of Commerce every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. Is it the first and the third Thursday? I don't know. Sometimes there's more weeks in the month. It's every 2 weeks. Next lesson. School of Commerce Season 2, Episode 3 will be on February 1st. All Bold School of Commerce lessons are at 1 p.m. And this one will be on why you should be using your Shopify blog. When you start a Shopify store, you have the option there. It's right there for you to start a blog. So what we're going to be talking about is why you should be using your blog, why long-form content is a really effective way for you to sell your products. Some of the stuff that you can be blogging about, you know what I mean? There's so many angles that you can take here. If you don't think that your product has anything that you can blog about, well, you're wrong. You know what I mean? There's so much that you can do out there. There's so many things that we're going to be talking about. A laundry list of items that you should be blogging. Maybe it's about your company. Maybe it's about features. Maybe it's a top 10 list. Maybe it's about what's new this week. Maybe it's about what's new this month. There's so many things that we're going to be talking about, especially related to your blog. So if you're new to e-commerce, if you're new to Shopify, if you're new to blogging, make sure to tune in on February 1st at 1 p.m. because we're going to be talking all about it. So thanks again, everybody. My name is Mike Tracolo, and this has been another episode of Bold School of Commerce. Thanks for tuning in, and happy selling. We'll see you later, alligators.